Welcome, dear listeners, to Cafe Tales, where the night's shadows whisper secrets long buried. Tonight, we beckon you into the grand halls of Ashford Manor, a timeless estate now cloaked in suspicion and dread, written in the style of the inimitable Agatha Christie. The Vanishing of Eyes plunges you into a world where a storm howls beyond the walls. Yet a darker tempest festers within a kidnapping, a cryptic ransom note, and a tangle of family secrets poised to unravel. Hercule Poirot, that maestro of the little grey cells, steps forth to pierce the fog of deceit. But before we venture into this maze of intrigue, I must ask a small favour. If this tale of mystery ignites your curiosity, please consider subscribing to our nocturnal circle and leaving a comment below to tell us where in the world you're listening from tonight. Now, settle in, dim the lights, and let the shadows speak. Chapter 1. The Invitation. The late afternoon sun dipped low over Ashford Manor, casting long shadows across the sprawling lawns and ivy-draped walls. The estate loomed grand and timeless. In the English countryside, its weathered stones whispering of a storied past. Yet a stillness hung in the air of faint unease that Poirot sensed as he stepped from the car, smoothing his immaculate suit and adjusting his moustache with a deft flick. Sir Henry Ashford, the manor's imposing master, had summoned him with a letter hinting at a matter of some delicacy. Its vagueness had piqued Poirot's insatiable curiosity, overriding any hesitation. Beside him, Captain Hastings emerged, tugging at his tie and shivering slightly. "Splendid place," Poirot Hastings remarked, squinting at the manor. "Though it's got a bit of a gloom about it, don't you think?" "Gloom, mon ami, is often the prelude to mystery," Poirot replied, his green eyes glinting with anticipation. A stern butler met them at the entrance, guiding them through echoing halls to the drawing-room, where the clink of glasses mingled with hushed voices. Pausing in the doorway, Poirot surveyed the scene with meticulous care. At the room's heart stood Isabella Ashford, a striking woman in her mid, her elegant gown unable to conceal the nervous flicker in her eyes. She offered Poirot a polite smile, though her glance darted toward the door, anticipating, or perhaps dreading, an arrival. Sir Henry, a robust man in his 60s, gripped his cane and boomed, "Poirot, good of you to come. Bit of a puzzle." "This business," his hearty tone clashed with the curt nods he gave the others, hinting at restrained impatience. Edward Langley, a cousin in his 30s, leaned against the mantel, his polished charm tinged with a rehearsed air. He sipped his drink silently, a faint smirk crossing his sharp features, as Isabella excused herself, pale and unsteady, near the window. Lionel Grayson, a handsome young man, clutched his glass too tightly, his jaw clenched. Hastings whispered, "He's Isabella's rejected suitor, still stung by her refusal." When he muttered a cutting remark, Sir Henry shot him a sharp glare. Aunt Beatrice, Sir Henry's bejewelled sister, lounged with a thin smile. "Isabella's fortune does attract such attention," she quipped, her composure faltering with a twitch of nerves. Isabella's laugh in response rang hollow. Clara, the maid, glided silently, her keen eyes noting every exchange as she poured drinks. When Edward murmured something to her, a glass slipped from her grasp, shattering on the floor. She knelt to clean it, her fingers trembling faintly. The door swung open, admitting Mr. Vincent Cole, a latecomer with an enigmatic air. He nodded politely to Poirot, his dark eyes lingering on Isabella. "I hear you're quite the detective," he said lightly, though his gaze held weight. Tension simmered Lionel's barely veiled anger. Edward's cool detachment, Aunt Beatrice's barbed curiosity. As the group drifted toward the dining room, Poirot lingered. His sharp eyes caught a torn scrap of paper by the fireplace. He retrieved it discreetly. The jagged words must tell, and danger stared up at him. Tucking it into his pocket, he smiled faintly. "Ah, the little grey cells," he murmured. "They begin to hum." Chapter 2. The Vanishing Act. The storm descended upon Ashford Manor with relentless force, its winds shrieking round the ancient stone walls like a chorus of restless spirits. Rain hammered the tall windows, and thunder growled as the dinner guests assembled in the dining room, where candlelight danced uneasily across the table. Hercule Poirot, seated near the head, felt a tension sharper than the tempest beyond the panes. Isabella Ashford presided over the meal with strained elegance, her pale hands trembling faintly as she raised her glass. Her laughter sounded hollow, and her gaze darted to the door, as though anticipating an unwelcome shadow. Poirot leaned toward Captain Hastings, his voice low. "Mon ami, the mademoiselle is unwell in spirit. Something weighs upon her. Nerves, perhaps," Hastings offered, brow furrowed. "Hosting can tax anyone." "Perhaps," Poirot murmured, though his keen eyes lingered on Isabella. "Yet my instincts suggest more." As dessert drew to a close, Isabella stood abruptly, her chair scraping the floor with a jarring screech. "Excuse me," she said, her tone brittle. "I need air." She hurried from the room, leaving a murmur of disquiet in her wake. Sir Henry Ashford, her father, rose halfway, gripping his cane. "Isabella," he called, but she disappeared into the dim corridor. He sank back, his face tormented with unspoken worry. Across the table, Edward Langley sipped his wine, a faint smirk playing on his lips. "She always did enjoy a scene," he remarked, his coolness stark against the room's unease. Poirot's moustache twitched. "A scene, Mr. Langley, or perhaps fear?" Edward's smile wavered, but before he could retort, Clara, the maid, entered to clear the plates. Her eyes flicked to Edward, and as she reached for his dish, a folded note slipped into his hand. A gesture Poirot's sharp gaze did not miss. Most curious, he thought, storing the detail in his meticulous mind. Morning arrived, cloaked in a soft drizzle. The storm's rage had subsided, but a fresh turmoil gripped the manor. Hastings burst into Poirot's room, breathless. Poirot and Isabella's vanished, gone in the night. Poirot dressed with swift precision. Gone, mon ami, or taken. In Isabella's bedroom, chaos reigned. Sir Henry paced, his features drawn with anguish. Aunt Beatrice twisted her handkerchief, her lips tight with censure. Lionel Grayson stood by the window, fists balled in silent fury. Mr. Vincent Cole lingered apart, his dark eyes inscrutable. Clara, pale and trembling, clutched a crumpled note. "I found this, sir," she whispered, passing it to Sir Henry, on her pillow. Sir Henry's voice cracked as he read, "Do not search for me. Pay £50,000 by midnight, or I shall be lost to you forever." Instructions to follow. The signature bore Isabella's name. Aunt Beatrice gasped. "Kidnapped. We must summon the police." Poirot raised a hand, his tone steady. "Permit me, Sir Henry, to inspect this note." He took the paper, studying it with care. The handwriting resembled Isabella's, yet the loops quivered as though penned by a hand under strain. The phrase, "I shall be lost to you forever," struck an odd, stilted note to composed for panic. "Mon ami." He said softly to Hastings, "This note, the handwriting quivers." It was not written freely. Forced, then, Hastings asked, or a clever imitation? But no, the eye is hers. Yet something is wrong. He turned to Clara, whose gaze darted to Edward. On her pillow, you say, mademoiselle? Yes. Sir, she murmured, barely audible. I touched nothing else. Poirot nodded, noting her uneased at the window. He spied a faint footprint in the damp earth, slender, feminine. Then his eyes caught Edward's sleeve, a missing cufflink, the edge frayed, the details. Hastings, they reveal what words conceal. Sir Henry's voice broke through. Poirot, what now? Pay wait. We proceed with care, Poirot said. The truth lurks here, and I shall uncover it. That evening, as the household scattered, Poirot lingered outside Isabella's room. The lock bore no marks of force, but a torn envelope in the wastebasket carried a whiff of her perfume. He pocketed it, his mind humming with fragments, the notes, tremor, the footprint, Edward's cufflink, Clara's fear, and Sir Henry's reticence about Isabella's mother. In his room, he lit a cigarette, staring at the moonlit drizzle. My instincts murmur of deceit, he mused, but whose hand guides the thread? Hastings entered, frowning. Poirot Lionel, he was livid with Isabella. Could he? None? Poirot cut in. His rage is too bold. The true culprit. Whispers, not shouts. Then who? Hastings pressed. Poirot's lips curved faintly. Patience, mon ami. The night holds its secrets yet. Chapter 3. Suspicions arise. The storm had relinquished its fury, leaving behind a stillness that pressed against the ancient stones of Ashford Manor. Beyond the tall windows, mist writhed. Over the lawns a ghostly shroud, while the air bore the rich, damp scent of earth freshly kissed by rain. Inside, a brittle peace reigned, though beneath it thrummed a current of unease. Hercule Poirot stood in the library, his small, neat figure framed by the glow of a dying fire. The flickering light danced across rows of leather-bound books, casting shadows that seemed to shift with secrets of their own. Captain Hastings hovered near the window, his honest face creased with worry. Poirot, he ventured, his voice hushed. This ransom demand, it's a vile business. Who could do such a thing? Poirot turned. His green eyes caught the firelight like twin emeralds. Desperate hearts often dare bold acts, and in this house I suspect we shall find many such souls. His gaze drifted to the hearth, but his mind was already threading its way through the maze of human frailty. With a slight nod to himself, he began his work. Lionel Grayson was the first to cross the library's threshold, his broad shoulders taut with resentment. His scowl was a thundercloud, and his voice cut sharp as a blade. I have no time for your questions, he snapped, though a tremor beneath his words betrayed him. Poirot's smile was gentle, almost indulgent. Monsieur Grayson, your anger toward Mademoiselle Isabella is most apparent. Tell me, how did it begin? Lionel's jaw clenched. His strong, capable hands balled into fists. She toyed with me, then tossed me aside. I was a fool to care, but I'd not stooped to this madness. Love can be a powerful force, monsieur. Does your temper not flare too readily? Poirot asked, his gaze piercing. A flush crept up Lionel's neck. His fingers twitched. I was angry, yes, but kidnapping, that's beyond reason. Poirot inclined his head, dismissing him with a murmured, perhaps. Yet, as Lionel stormed out, Poirot's thoughts lingered. A man scorned, he reflected, but not, I think, the master of this plot. Aunt Beatrice entered next, a rustle of silk and a glitter of jewels. Her smile was as cold and cutting as frost. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her tone arch, "surely this is just Isabella playing the theatrical minx." Poirot tilted his head, his voice mild as spring rain. "You remain most composed, madame. Yet her inheritance, it is a tempting thing." "No," her smile faltered a mere flicker, swiftly masked. "I manage my own affairs. Debts come and go. Gambling debts linger, madame, and envy can sting sharply," Poirot countered softly. Her eyes hardened, though a twitch at her mouth spoke volumes. "I'd never touch my niece. Blood is sacred." "Oui," Poirot murmured, watching her retreat, "but even the sacred may be profaned." In the dim servants' quarters, Poirot found Clara, her hands trembling as she polished silver with feverish care. She started at his approach, her whisper barely audible. "Mademoiselle Clara, I've said all I know." "Perhaps," he replied, his tone soothing, "but fear dims the memory. You saw something." "No," her hands stilled, her gaze darted. "I saw Mr. Edward slip out after dinner. He looked secretive, and the note you passed him." Poirot asked, his voice light as a breeze. Her breath caught. Her eyes widened with panic. "You saw that? It was nothing linens, that's all." Poirot's moustache quivered. A faint smile lurked, a trifle or a terror. "Clara, your silence is a confession of its own." She shields another, Poirot thought. But who? In the conservatory, Mr. Vincent Cole awaited, a book in hand, his dark eyes meeting Poirot's with a glint of amusement. "Monsieur Poirot, I knew you'd come." Poirot's brow arched delicately. "You are an enigma, Monsieur Cole. Your presence here it is most convenient." Cole's smile was a riddle calm and unshaken. "I've known the Ashfords forever. Sir Henry valued my counsel in private affairs of the heart or the purse." Poirot pressed, his tone probing. "Perhaps both," Cole answered, unflinching. "But I have no part in Isabella's disappearance. My mind ponders. Monsieur, why does a man like you linger at the edges?" Poirot's eyes narrowed. Cole's smile tightened, but he held his peace. "A shadow in the dance," Poirot mused, "but not the one leading." Lastly, Edward Langley met Poirot in the study, sprawled by the fire with a brandy glass cradled in his hand. His ease was almost too perfect. "Monsieur Poirot, you've been industrious, and you, Mr. Langley, are a study in tranquility." Poirot observed, his voice edged with curiosity. "A rare gift amid chaos." Edward's lips quirked. "I have no reason to fret. Isabella will turn up." "Your certainty intrigues," Poirot said, his gaze steady. "But your cuffling kit has vanished." "No," Edward's hand brushed his sleeve. "Lost days ago." "A trifle curious," Poirot remarked, mild as milk. "For I found it beneath Mademoiselle Isabella's window." Edward's eyes flickered, but he said no more. A crack in the veneer. Poirot thought later. Poirot slipped into Isabella's chamber, where silence hung heavy, broken only by the distant tick of a clock. The bed stood pristine. The ransom note was now in official hands. In the wastebasket, he fished out a charred scrap of paper, its edges crumbling. With care, he pieced together the words, "Must tell danger." A whisper of her perfume lingered on the fragments. His eyes fell on a small desk, its drawer stubbornly locked. "Hastings," he called, his voice soft. "The key, where might it be?" Hastings, lingering by the door, frowned. "No one's spoken of a key." "Precisement," Poirot said, his thoughts racing. "A lock without a key, a secret tightly held." Dusk draped the manor in shadow, the mist coiling thicker beyond the glass. Poirot stood by the window, a cigarette glowing faintly in his hand. His mind a whirl of threads yet to be woven. "Hastings," he murmured, "my mind stirs, yet one piece eludes me." "Which?" Hastings asked, his voice a breath in the dark. "The past, mon ami. It holds the truths we have yet to uncover." Poirot's gaze drifted to Lady Margaret Ashford's portrait, her calm eyes gazing down. That night, as the house slept, Poirot padded silently along the corridor, his slippers hushed on the carpet. A creak tugged him toward the library, where a sliver of light spilled from the door. Peering through, he saw Clara, her hand shaking as she rummaged in a drawer. Edward loomed over her, his whisper a blade in the stillness. "Keep quiet, or you'll regret it," he hissed, his voice taut. With threat, Poirot withdrew, unseen, his eyes gleaming in the gloom. The net draws tight, he thought, retreating to his room, where the night's discoveries churned like the mist beyond dot chapter. 4. Shadows of truth. The morning broke over Ashford Manor with a grey, oppressive weight. The storm's remnants clung to the air like a mourner's veil. Hercule Poirot stood at his guest-room window, a neat silhouette against the dim light, hands clasped behind his back. His keen green eyes pierced the mist shrouding the grounds below. But it was not the weather that held his attention. It was the riddle of Isabella Ashford's vanishing. With a crisp adjustment of his overcoat, he descended the stairs, shoes clicking softly on polished oak. Captain Hastings awaited him in the hall, his brow furrowed with impatience. "Good morning, Poirot," Hastings said, voice tinged with unease. "Have your little grey cells made any headway?" Poirot's lips curved faintly. "Patience, mon ami. My mind works even in rest." To the library, Hastings, "We have truths to uncover." The library loomed grand and sombre, its towering shelves heavy with leather-bound tomes, exuding dust and time. A broad oak table stood at its heart, littered with papers and a dormant candelabrum. Poirot's gaze flitted across the room. The worn rug, the hearthside armchair, the serene portrait of Lady Margaret Ashford gazing down. He approached the table, fingers grazing a stack of estate records. "Hastings, the ledger on the shelf, if you please." Hastings retrieved a weighty maroon-bound volume. Poirot opened it, eyes tracing the meticulous script of births, deaths, and marriages, the Ashford lineage in ink. His finger halted on a faded entry: "Margaret Ashford wed to Henry Ashford, 1895. Issue, Isabella, born 1896. Curious," Poirot murmured, an eyebrow lifting. "The dates, they are precise." "None." Hastings leaned in. "What's curious about them?" Poirot tapped the page. 9 months from wedding to birth exec. Yet this house whispers doubt. Before Hastings could respond, the door creaked, and Sir Henry Ashford entered. His once robust frame seemed shrunken, his face etched with weariness. "Poirot," he said brusquely, "what are you doing with that?" Poirot closed the ledger with care. "Sir Henry, I seek only the truth. Tell me of Lady Margaret's health in your early marriage." Sir Henry's jaw tightened. "She was delicate. What of it?" "Delicate," Poirot replied smoothly, "and perhaps absent from Ashford Manor for a time." The man's eyes flashed. "You overstep, no?" Poirot countered, stepping nearer. "I observed, Sir Henry, that Isabella may not be your daughter." Silence stretched, taut as a wire, broken only by the mantel clock's steady tick. Sir Henry sank into the armchair, hands trembling. "What do you know?" Poirot's tone softened. Only what this house conceals, that Isabella may not be yours. Sir Henry's shoulders fell. Margaret confessed on her deathbed, Isabella wasn't mine, but I raised her as my own. Swore to protect her hand, her true father. Poirot pressed. Who? Sir Henry shook his head. She never told me, only that he was lost to her later. Poirot found Edward Langley in the garden, his tall form stooped over rose bushes, shears gleaming. The air hung thick with damp earth and floral scent. Monsieur Langley, Poirot called, advancing with measured steps. You tend these roses well. Do you also tend ambitions for the estate? Edward straightened, grey eyes narrowing. What? Are you on about Poirot? Poirot tilted his head. A fine inheritance, monsieur. And you, Sir Henry's cousin, stand near its claimantless. Isabella remains heir. Edward's lips thinned. She's the heir. That's the law. We Poirot agreed. Unless that law rests on a falsehood. What do you know of Isabella's birth? The shears snapped shut with a sharp click. Nothing more than anyone. She's Sir Henry's daughter. Poirot watched him, noting the flicker in his jaw. And if she is not? If there were proof that you are the true heir? Edward turned back to his roses. You're chasing shadows, Poirot. Leave it be. Shadows? Yes, Poirot mused, eyes glinting. But shadows reveal the light. That afternoon, in the servants' quarters, Poirot faced Clara, the housemaid. She stood by the hearth, twisting a rag. Her pale face tormented with nerves. Mademoiselle Clara, Poirot said kindly, you see much here. What have you seen of Mr. Edward? Her gaze flicked to the door. He's been restless, sir. The night Miss Isabella vanished, I saw him in the hall with papers, old, yellowed ones, to wear. The stables, she whispered. He lingered there. Poirot nodded, thoughts worrying. Mercy, mademoiselle. You have aided me well. As dusk settled, Poirot sat alone in the library, the ledger opened before him. The puzzle took shapes of Henry's revelation, Edward's keenness, Clara's account. Edward knew something perhaps held evidence of Isabella's illegitimacy. A secret to secure his claim. But where? And what had he done with Isabella? A rustle interrupted him. Hastings entered, clutching a folded letter. Poirot, this was behind a loose brick in the stables, addressed to Lady Margaret. Poirot unfolded it, scanning the faded script. My darling Margaret, our child must never know the truth. I leave. For France, tonight. Forgive me, V.C. V.C., Poirot said aloud. Vincent Calder guessed. Hastings frowned. But what does it mean? It means, mon ami Poirot replied, folding the letter, Edward may hold the key to Isabella's fate. Tomorrow we confront him. Chapter 5. The hidden heir. The afternoon sun cast a pale, reluctant glow over Ashford Manor, its light dimmed by heavy clouds that seemed to press upon the estate. In the library, Hercule Poirot sat with a letter signed V. Messiah spread before him. His small, neat hands rested lightly on the table, his fingers drumming a faint, impatient rhythm on the arm of his chair, a rare crack in his composure. Captain Hastings paced nearby, his boots scuffing the polished floor, his brow furrowed with unease. Poirot, Hastings said, stopping short, you're certain this V.C. is Vincent Cole? It seems to neat. Poirot's green eyes flickered with a faint knowing amusement. Neat, mon ami, perhaps. But my instincts, they do not deceive. They suggest there are threads yet to be unravelled. We must speak with Monsieur Callan, then to the stables. Vincent Cole awaited them in the conservatory, seated at a chessboard, where the pieces stood locked in a silent standoff, their shadows stretching long and jagged across the table. The air hung thick with the scent of damp earth and wilting ferns, the glass walls pressing in like a trap. Cole glanced up as they entered, his dark eyes steady, his expression a careful mask. "Monsieur Cole," Poirot began, his voice smooth. "As velvet, you have been most elusive. Tell me of your connection to Lady Margaret Ashford." A shadow flitted across Cole's face, but his tone remained even. "She was a friend. I advised her on financial matters. Nothing more." Poirot's moustache gave a slight twitch. "And yet," he said, producing the letter with a graceful flourish, "this suggests something deeper. A child, perhaps." Cole's jaw tightened, a muscle pulsing beneath his skin. "That was private, long buried. It has no bearing on Isabella's disappearance." "Mais nan," Poirot's voice sharpened, slicing through the air. "But if Isabella is not Sir Henry's daughter, the inheritance shifts. Does it not?" Cole surged to his feet, the chessboard trembling as a pawn toppled. "I've said enough. Leave the past alone." Poirot's gaze remained piercing, his tone insistent. "And yet, Monsieur Cole, you returned to Ashford Manor at a most opportune moment. Why now, after so many years?" Vincent's composure cracked, a flicker of guilt crossing his face. I heard whispers that Edward Langley was digging into Isabella's past her birth. I feared what he might do if he uncovered the truth. I came to protect her, or to face Sir Henry at last." Poirot's brow arched. To protect her or to claim her? Vincent's shoulders sagged. "Both, perhaps, but I swear I had no part in her disappearance." As Cole stormed out, Hastings turned to his companion. "He's hiding something, isn't he?" "Oui," Poirot murmured, his gaze distant. "But not, I think, the core of this mystery. His return is tied to duty, not malice, to the stables." The stables loomed at the estate's edge, their weathered timbers groaning in the faint wind. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of hay and leather, tinged with a fleeting trace of perfume, Isabella's perhaps. Hovering near the stalls, Poirot's sharp eyes caught a loose floorboard at the back. Kneeling with surprising agility, he pried it open, revealing a small dust-choked box. Hastings leaned closer as Poirot lifted the lid, extracting a sheath of yellowed papers. "What are they?" Poirot unfolded the topmost document. He read in a low, deliberate tone, "Isabella, Margaret Cole, born 1896. Father, Vincent Cole. Mother, Margaret Ashford." Hastings drew a sharp breath. "So Isabella is Cole's daughter. But why conceal it?" Poirot's face grew solemn. "To protect her, perhaps, or the Ashford legacy. But this," he tapped the certificate, "is what Edward seeks." Edward, Hastings echoed. "You think he knows?" Poirot inclined his head. "He hunts for it, Hastings, and with it he could seize the estate. But first, he must ensure Isabella cannot challenge him." That evening, Poirot confronted Edward Langley in the drawing-room. Edward lounged by the fire, brandy glass in hand, his casual posture a touch studied. "Monsieur Langley," Poirot said, his tone soft, yet edged with steel, "you have been busiest searching the stables, pressing Clara. What do you seek?" Edward's eyes narrowed, a spark of defiance glinting in them. "You're mistaken, Poirot." "No," Poirot raised the birth certificate. "This means nothing to you." Edward's mask slipped. He lunged forward, but Poirot stepped back, his gaze unrelenting. You knew of Isabella's true birth. You planned to use it and her vanishing to claim your right. Edward's face contorted. It is mine. I'm the true heir. Isabella's a fraud. Poirot's voice turned icy. And so you made her vanish. Edward's fists clenched. I didn't harm her. She's safe. But the estate belongs to me. Where is she? Poirot pressed. Edward's defiance solidified. You'll get nothing from me. Later, in Poirot's room, Hastings resumed his restless pacing. If Edward won't talk, what next? Poirot's eyes gleamed with quiet intensity. We follow the threads, Hastings. Clara saw him at the stables and, I suspect, he had company. We must search the grounds. Isabella is close. As night draped the manor in shadow, Poirot and Hastings ventured into the misty gardens. A faint light glowed from a distant cottage, its flicker a silent summons as they approached. A soft cry muffled, urgent, drifted from within. Poirot, Hastings whispered. Is that we? Poirot replied, his grip tightening. On his cane, it is time to end this. Chapter 6. The trap night had fallen over Ashford Manor like a velvet curtain, its silence thick and unbroken, save for the faint whisper of mist curling through the gardens. Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings moved swiftly toward the distant cottage, its lone light cutting through the dark like a weary eye. A sharp, desperate cry had reached them moments before, urging their steps across the dew-slit grass. Poirot, Hastings whispered, his voice taut. Do you think it's Isabella? Noose Poirot replied, his gloved hand tightening on his cane. But we must tread with care. Edward is cunning, he will not leave his treasure unguarded. They reached the cottage, its door a weathered slab, half hidden by ivy. Poirot tested the latchet, yielded with a faint groan, admitting them into a dim, sparse room. A single lantern sputtered on a rough table, casting jagged shadows over a chair and a narrow cot in the corner. There a figure lay bound, her back to them. Isabella. Hastings surged forward, but Poirot's arm shot out, halting him. A trap, mon ami, Poirot murmured, his keen eyes tracing a nearly invisible tripwire stretched across the floor, tethered to a beam above. A trap. Hastings paled, retreating. Good Lord, how do we? Poirot knelt, snipping the wire with a pocket knife drawn from his coat. Now, mon ami, we may proceed. They approached the cot where Isabella lay, wrists and ankles bound, a gag muffling her breath. Her eyes, wide with fear and relief, met theirs as Poirot gently freed her mouth. Poirot, she rasped, her voice raw. It was Edward. He forced me to write the note, he said. If I didn't. Calm yourself, mademoiselle, Poirot soothed. You are safe now. But where is Edward? She shook her head, trembling. I don't know. He left hours ago. He's dangerous. Poirot's eyes glinted in the lantern's glow. But so is Poirot when the game is afoot. Chapter 7. The reveal. The morning broke over Ashford Manor with a reluctant sun, its pale rays clawing through a shroud of mist that clung to the lawns like a lingering ghost. The storm had spent its fury in the night, leaving behind a damp, expectant hush, as though the estate itself sensed the unravelling to come. Within the drawing-room, the air was taut. The velvet drapes parted to expose a world softened by fog, yet no softness touched the faces of those gathered there. Sir Henry Ashford sat enthroned in his armchair, his gnarled hands clamped tight around its arms, his jaw set like stone. Beside him stood Isabella, her pallor stark against her dark hair, her eyes unwavering. Aunt Beatrice hunched on a settee, her lace handkerchief a twisted wreck in her nervous grasp. Vincent Cole leaned against the window frame, his silhouette sharp, his gaze distant yet piercing. Clara lingered near the threshold, her fingers knotted, her breath shallow, and at the center. Commanding the room with quiet authority stood Hercule Poirot's mole impeccable, his green eyes alight with the clarity of revelation. "Madame, Messieurs," he began, his voice slicing the silence with surgical precision, "we have navigated a web of lies, but the truth now stands clear. Mademoiselle Isabella's disappearance was a calculated act of greed, crafted by a cunning hand." He pivoted to Edward Langley, who sat apart, his frame rigid, his eyes glinting with defiance. "Monsieur Langley," Poirot said, his tone a velvet blade, "your performance was admirable, but the final act is mine to direct." Edward's lip curled. "You've nothing but conjecture, Poirot. Prove it, conjecture." Poirot's moustache twitched a flicker of disdain in his gaze. "No, monsieur. I have facts that bind you tighter than iron. Permit me to unravel them." A murmur stirred the room. Poirot raised a hand, silencing it. "First the birth certificate, hidden in the stable's rafters. It declares Mademoiselle Isabella, not the daughter of Sir Henry, but of Lady Margaret and Vincent Cole." A sharp intake of breath broke the stillness. Aunt Beatrice's gasp was high and brittle. Sir Henry's face fractured, his hands trembling as they fell to his lap. Isabella's eyes flicked to Vincent, who met her stare, his own fracturing with a silent, buried grief. Poirot continued, relentless. "You, Monsieur Langley, unearthed this secret and saw your opening. As Sir Henry's cousin, you deemed the estate your birthright. To seize it, Isabella had to vanish." Edward's defiance wavered, his voice a rasp. "You can't," Poirot cut in, his words a whip crack. "You abducted her, forced her to pen the ransom note, and concealed her in the cottage plotting a tragic accident, but you were careless. The cufflink beneath her window yours, engraved with your initials. The tripwire in the cottager, clumsy trap. And Clara, whom you threatened when she glimpsed your scheme." Clara's head dipped, her whisper trembling. "He said he'd see me ruined." Poirot's gaze softened, rare warmth breaking. "Through your silence protected you, mademoiselle. Your words now condemn him." He turned back to Edward, whose mask was slipping, and then the muddy footprint beneath Isabella's window, a single, fresh mark on a rain-soaked night. "Yours, monsieur, left as you spirited her away. The tread, the size your boots betray you. And on top of it, all the cufflink beneath her window yours, engraved with your initials." Edward's sneer collapsed. His voice rose. "A footprint, a cufflink, that's your proof." "Oui," Poirot replied, his tone icy. "A footprint, a cufflink, a tripwire's more clues. But woven together, they expose your guilt. You underestimated my methods." Edward lunged forward, desperation baring his teeth. "The estate was mine. She's no Ashford, she's a pretender." Sir Henry surged to his feet, his voice thunderous. "She's my daughter blood, or no. You tear us apart for greed." Isabella stepped between them, her voice steady, cutting through the storm. "I'd have shared it all, Edward. You chose betrayal over family." Edward's laugh was a jagged shard. "Family? Ask him." He thrust a finger at Vincent. "The coward who abandoned you." Vincent's head bowed, his words soft, weighted. "I loved your mother, Isabella. I left to spare you shame. It was my mistake." Poirot interposed, his voice a calm anchor. "The past may shadow us, but it need not bind us. Mademoiselle Isabella, you are free. The truth has liberated you. As the authorities closed in, Edward's protests dwindled to a snarl. Swallowed by the hall's echo, Poirot faced Sir Henry, his tone gentle. You have borne much, monsieur. Now you may mend. Sir Henry gripped Isabella's hand, his eyes wet. She's mine, Poirot. Always will be. Poirot inclined his head, a faint smile curving his lips. The heart knows its own, monsieur. Later, as Poirot and Hastings stepped onto the sun-washed drive, Isabella approached, her face alight with quiet strength. Monsieur Poirot, you've given me more than freedom. You've given me peace. Poirot bowed, his voice soft. It is my purpose, mademoiselle. But take care, the heart's mysteries are the deepest of all. The car awaited. As they settled in, Hastings cast a glance back at the manor. A devilish... Not Poirot, you untangled it brilliantly. Poirot's eyes gleamed, his moustache tilting upward. My mind, Hastings, it pierces the fog, and the truth it always prevails. The engine hummed, and Ashford Manor receded into the mist, its secrets laid bare, its wounds left to heal. And so, dear listeners, the mists of Ashford Manor unveil the light of truth. With his unrivaled brilliance, Hercule Poirot has sliced through a web of greed and betrayal, exposing Edward Langley as the mastermind behind Isabella's abduction. The estate, once a theatre of secrets and strife, now rests as a monument to justice reclaimed. As the storm fades and dawn touches the ancient stones, we leave the Ashfords to mend their fractured bonds, their hidden pasts laid bare. If this Café Tales journey has enthralled you, we invite you to subscribe to our circle and share your thoughts in the comments below. Until our next tale, may the shadows whisper gently to you.